Hello and welcome to the final session on GRC Edge as we take technology to trust. So, my name's Gary Lynam. I'm the Managing Director for Protect in the EMEA region. And today I'm going to take you through some views and observations on how we believe we can turn risk intelligence into impact. So, delighted to have your company for the next 45 minutes to an hour, and hopefully you enjoy the session. Okay, let's start with a quick recap of the key insights from the previous sessions today. Number one, visibility is the foundation of effective governance. Now, across today's sessions, a consistent theme has emerged. Board and executives cannot govern and opine on what they cannot clearly see. Organizations are undergoing pressure to provide clear, timely visibility of risk exposure, control effectiveness, and emerging threats across the enterprise. Risk information must be able to enable decisions, not just reporting. So many organizations collect significant amounts of risk data, but the challenge is turning that information into decision ready insights. We believe effective GRC programs should be focusing on actionable intelligence that supports prioritization, accountability, and better business decisions. Use of agentic AI is proliferating risk functions, and risk managers must have a clear vision and appetite what they are comfortable mobilizing in the wider organization to achieve this. Disconnected processes still undermine resilience. Now, several speakers highlighted the challenges created by fragmented risk, compliance, and control activities across teams and systems. We believe without integration, organizations are going to struggle to maintain consistency, reduce duplication, and gain a true enterprise view of risk. As organizations mature, the drive to understand interconnected nature of risks and potential contagion risks within an organization are increasing rapidly. We see firms investing more and more time shaping robust scenarios to ensure they understand their process flows and recovery flows in more detail. And finally, trust is built through consistent execution. So ultimately, strong governance and compliance aren't just about frameworks or policies. Trust with regulators, boards, customers, and stakeholders is built through consistent, transparent execution of risk management practices. To turn technology into trust, the intelligence into impact for your organization, we first need to solve a few core challenges. Faster decisions require better data. So risk decisions often take too long because the data is fragmented, outdated, or buried in reports. What leaders really need is timely, reliable, real-time information they can act on with confidence. We still see issues with risk being seen as someone else's job. In many organizations, risk and compliance are still viewed as the responsibility of the risk team alone, especially in smaller organizations. But effective risk management requires participation across the business, not just a central function. Effective domains for risk owners to have their own personal space supports this in the GRC tool. With regards visibility, we still see disconnected risk domains. Key areas like vendor risk, cyber, and operational resilience, which has had significant prominence in recent times, are often managed in separate tools or processes. Now, there are two options here. One is that kind of can remove some concentration risk, but two, it also makes it hard to understand how risks interact and how they affect the organization as a whole. We still observe too much time in administration. Risk teams tend to spend a lot of time chasing updates, compiling reports, and raising basic awareness instead of working with the business to understand and manage risk strategically. At ProTech, we often adopt the term progress, not perfection. It's something we strongly encourage as we move through implementations of our product. And this really helps shift the perception of the role of the risk team to trusted advisor from one perhaps of administrative oversight as potentially viewed by the business. And finally, in this new world, AI is creating risk instead of helping manage it. So, as organizations adopt AI, one thing we need to be mindful of is AI can introduce some new operational, regulatory, and ethical risks. So, the opportunity to use this technology is not just to create capability, but also to strengthen oversight and control. Now, let's take a look at what good looked like. So, good from a product perspective involves enabling performance. At its best, risk management isn't just about protecting the organization from loss, it enables performance and supports the business in achieving its objectives. It is also about enterprise risk functions working together. Risk and compliance functions stay aligned and coordinated. They're working horizontally within the organization and not in vertical silos. They're working towards the same outcomes without duplicating effort and creating clarity rather than additional process or overlapping process. Also, having clear ownership across the business remains of utmost importance. Risk management isn't confined to a central team. There's clear ownership within the business, and people understand their role in managing risk, regardless of what team they belong to. That clarity will build confidence in decisions and also in execution. We also see a keen role for technology supporting insight and decisions. In today's world, AI and automation are helping ensure better quality data, reduce manual effort and workflow, and connect information across the organization so leaders can see the bigger picture faster and make more informed decisions quickly. There's also a significant role in technology to provide trust in the framework. Ultimately, the goal is trust across the organization that the risk and compliance framework is working, and this in turn will strengthen resilience whilst helping the organization achieve its strategy. The right tech will help you earn this trust and build confidence with your front line. To do this, they need a system that is easy to use and helps you get the job quickly and accurately, expands your knowledge when you need it, and also has AI that proves trustworthy assistance and is transparent. It also must be able to integrate with other applications across the technology stack that the organization is using all the time. And when the tools people use every day are easy, helpful, and trustworthy, engagement naturally follows. And so too, as a result, will stronger risk culture. So let's explore how this works in practice. To do this, we're going to take you through an overview of Protect's Cognita. So using Anthropic AI's Claude Sonnet, Protect recently released our embedded AI assistant Cognita to help users navigate the system, complete tasks, and fill in forms such as incidents. Our objective is to help risk and compliance teams find incident trends that may indicate bigger problems, deduplicate records, and generate insights to flag priorities with the executive team and the board. Next month, we'll be releasing features to automate workflows in areas like TPRM and regulatory intelligence to keep track of reg change and manage compliance obligations. Cognita is superior to generic tools because it is trained on Protect's own expert risk methodology content and will also securely reference your data to tailor suggestions and recommendations without your data being used by anyone else. The danger of rushed AI features is that they introduce new risks to your process. Protect's AI is designed by risk professionals and trained on trusted authoritative content, so guidance is accurate and relevant to your organization. We've designed it to be safe and transparent with verifiable results and guardrails that can ensure accuracy and controls across the platform. Protect customers will have flexibility, so we're very keen that customers will have the choice to opt in to use our AI features, and customer data will only be used to fulfill the service, and it won't be used to train or build AI models, which is a question we receive quite regularly. The data will be held by our tech partner temporarily to fulfill the service. So one of the significant workflows which is deployed by almost all Protect users is the ability to log an incident. The pop-up here shows options available to the user when accessing Cognita, and an open space to have a dialogue with the bot to navigate around the risk system. So let's take a look at what logging an incident looks like. This was an area we were particularly keen to focus on as a starting point, introducing AI into the tool. The reason for this is 90% of Protect customers are business users, so outside of just the risk and compliance function or resilience function, and almost 100% of Protect customers use Protect for incident management workflows. Now, some of the traditional challenges with incident workflows may be incomplete data coming through from the front line, Stakeholders not included in the workflow as incident is not categorized accurately, and potentially some of the impacts of the incident are not identified easily. So if there's a compliance impact and there's a regulatory breach notification requirement, which may need it to be adhered to at a particular amount of time, we want to make sure the organization is well placed to make that decision quickly. In this example here, what we're taking you through is a free text field where the user can add in simple text to outline the nature of the incident or the event that's occurred. Protect will provide, or through the Cognita solution, suggestions with what to include in that initial summary. And this can also extend to attaching files to support any evidence gathering or an overall summary of what's actually occurred. Once the end user or the business user has put in that general text or free text to summarize what's happened with the incident, and after accommodating the prompts that the suggestions has tabled, the end user will click to analyze my description. Now, when they've analyzed their description, they'll see a progress page pop up, and this will kind of highlight that the AI is running in the background and it's translating that simple text onto the form. In doing so, expediting the workflow and ensuring the accurate mapping of the data to the correct fields. Now, as we transition into the incident management form, the first thing I would draw your attention to is the free text that has been entered will be available in the bot on the page. And this is really important because it provides that reference point and avoids the use of multiple screens or transitioning between different screens. So it's there for ease of reference, and there's an audit record and date and timestamp linked to that entry if the user needs to bring it back up or review it at a future point in time. Now, as we get on to the incident form itself, a couple of things to drag your attention to that AI is enabling. So you'll see some pre-filled fields. And here, what we'll explain is that this is drafted by AI. So it's very transparent what AI has done and what it hasn't done. So you'll see the drafted by AI label on each of the fields, which has been drafted by AI. And then you'll also see the prompt for suggest. And this offers the opportunity for the end user to seek suggestions from AI with regards to whether potentially a regulatory obligation has been breached or not, whether it's contained, etc., based on the information that's already been provided to the system. If there is modifications made by the user, it will be tagged as modified by the user. So we're really keen to make sure that we're very transparent where the human is in the loop and where AI has contributed to that data field. Alternatively, there might be some examples whereby someone's struggling to understand the incident management requirements and new to the business and ensure what they should be adding to that incident form. In that scenario, they can ask Cognita to support. So they can ask Cognita simple questions, and the Protect knowledge base has extensive knowledge developed over 20 years, largely by Dave Tatum, one of our co-founders, who many might know and be aware of. And if a user needs more information, for example, what lessons learned should be documented from a cyber incident, Cognita refers to the Protect Academy and our thought leadership content. Now, this is particularly relevant for those business users seeking reassurance around things like risk definitions and the glossary of terms across enterprise risk, which at times can sometimes be misinterpreted by the business users. Moving on to the next stage. So this is at the stage where the incident's been submitted on that initial page. We're now moving into the perhaps the investigation stage, or perhaps where the first line risk owner or risk manager is starting to get involved and understand in more detail and perform that incident and breach assessment. So what's helpful here is Cognita will help find similar incidents. That can help you identify a cluster and accelerate a finding or a common root cause faster. It can help you identify duplicate incidents that could otherwise clutter your data. And this solves a big problem for organizations who often, in times past, in my previous roles at large financial institutions, um, where we have a number of duplicate or multiple entries relating to the same event present in the risk tool. One such organization I used to work for had over 2,000 of these and became a huge point of frustration for management, where they had no clear point of reference or no clear management oversight of the actual incident. And in this example here, you can see on the right-hand side where it's highlighting those associated incidents. Moving on to how Protect, and to explain a little bit about how Protect integrates with other apps you use, making it easy to incorporate into your existing tech ecosystem. So Protect is firmly aware and fully recognizes that in today's landscape, a GRC tool cannot stand in isolation. It needs to be an integrated part of the wider technology stack. So in this example here, if when an incident is submitted, the team member who needs to review it can be notified via Teams message. And this really is helping organizations streamline the GRC tool into the wider ways of working of the organization. We use Teams in this example. It could be Slack or it could be other such applications. And we really believe it's important GRC tools can keep pace with this seamlessly engage with the business. So, workflow alerts via email traditionally has been the way that that communication has been performed. But many have increasingly drawn skepticism as social engineering from a cyber perspective has become more widespread in people's inboxes. So we really believe interacting with the business in ways that they're commonly interacting with others is really a way to bring governance, risk, and compliance, as part of their day-to-day activities. Other examples we see widely used might be things such as calendarizing KRIs. So if you've got a key risk metric that's due at the end of each month, um, the tool can integrate with your team's calendar, highlight on the last business day of the month that the KRIs are due to be put into the product, and have a useful reference link there to take you directly to that landing page to put that data into the platform. Cognita can also help the incident manager with suggested impacted root causes, risks, and controls. So in the chat box here, Cognita is suggesting impacted risks from your existing centrally managed risk library. Now, risk library, for any of you aware of Protect, this is one of the foundational blocks of our platform. So we strongly encourage the build out of risks, control taxonomies, and frameworks. And really what that enables you to do then is drive consistency and standardization with your reporting, but also with the possibilities now opening up to AI to get that consistent outcome. The human in the loop, however, can still overwrite any suggestions by AI, and that's something we've been carefully trying to navigate as we introduce AI into the Protect platform. We recognize there still will be an element of vulnerability, and there still will be some organizational context that we might always be aware of. So, in that scenario, we are certainly keen to provide that optionality for organizations to override any suggestions by the AI. So I guess to summarize there, AI is helping and not necessarily making decision. It's really just helping the business make better decisions with those incident descriptions and connections to support. And of course, the really important here is the linkage to controls, ensuring that the business is aware of these controls and that they are dependent upon, and which they have had process gaps and weaknesses, so they can identify those necessary issues. They can be raised and controls can be corrected at the previous recurrence. So, from a risk culture perspective, that increasing or enhancing that connection with the controls to which they're dependent upon, we really see that as a huge benefit to risk culture and making sure the board is aware and Exco is aware of which controls are, I guess, contributing to vulnerabilities in the organization's critical processes or service lines or business lines, and they can make the necessary investments there then, depending on their risk appetite. So moving on to, I guess, the point of gaining trust for a risk and compliance team. So if we ask this question, what does trust look like for a risk and compliance team today? And we really believe a system that accelerates risk management workflows by connecting data across the enterprise, really helping you identify and prioritize those risks, controls, and other signals, early warning signals to think about. lifting that risk culture and ownership across the enterprise, and really cutting the time spent. So driving that operational efficiency, performing those risk management tasks and related areas, but also making it easier to prepare for things such as audits or third party due diligence assessments. And we know risk and compliance team want to spend more and more time with the business and be that trusted business advisor. And to do that, that will help the organization meet their obligations, reduce risk more generally, and work towards those strategic objectives. Again, taking that time away from administration and those non value adding activities. So, what does this look like in practice? So moving into risk profiling in the organization, this would be a summary of multiple business units and their related risk control self-assessments. So if we take the information technology area as an example, what we can see here is that you've got seven risks listed, but what we've got is clear ownership. So we've got assigned responsibility to John the CISO and Andy IT. We've got clear dates assigned for the timely update of the risk assessment. The status of the risk is clear, so we understand in the risk management life cycle where that particular risk sits. And also, we can quickly assess where the residually high risks are. And this is very useful for someone in an enterprise risk role who really needs to understand what those residually high risks status are and why they're trending as such. It provides an auditable record, so having these risks all in the one space and date and timestamp as the users come in and modify and do their periodic updates, and also the ability to provide customizable views. So depending on which data fields the end user finds useful, they can pick and choose fields that really can help personalize their engagement with the GRC tool. Just moving into the actual risk assessment form itself. And really here, we just want to give you an overview of really how Protect aims to build out that risk management story. We often talk about risk management assessment or risk assessment process as often a book and telling that story via chapters. And in our book with chapters, we will refer to each section, be it the initial risk identification piece as the first section, inherent risk assessment as the second section or chapter, and then moving on to controls, residual risk, and maybe target risk rating or treatment actions as subsequent chapters. But all of these elements combined seek to align with the ISO 31 standards, but also to help the business tell that story of the risks they feel are present in the organization today. Now, one of the things I mentioned earlier was our kind of focus on risk libraries and taxonomies. And what you'll see is anywhere we've got three dots in the labels of the fields, so you'll see in the risk label, in the external cyber attack, virus, malware, and denial of service, you'll see the three dots there. That takes the end user quite quickly to the risk library. And really what we're aiming to drive here is consistency and standardization of information. And the best way to do that is to make sure that we're removing, where possible, the need for free text fields. Free text fields can still be made available, and you can see that in the cause and impact description on the right-hand side. And they're kind of options for customers. Not every customer will look to deploy those particular fields. As we move down the risk assessment form, really what we're trying to do is paint a picture and bring it to life with regards to what risk is in the organization. So different organizations will use different risk management philosophies and methodologies. And we've seen everything from 3x3 to 7x7 and splitting risk from opportunity matrices. But really here through hover functionality, we're just trying to make it as easy as possible for the user to select the inherent risk rating and to educate them along the way with regards to where that sits with the consequence and likelihood assessment and an overall score. On the right-hand side, you'll see what we refer to as an auxiliary field. Now, this is really useful because we're trying to encourage risk management to be dynamic and the whole workflow that enables that to be moving and fluid. The auxiliary field does a date and timestamp of the update. So it allows the user potentially just to add a brief comment for that one field, and you can then look back over the year as you do your kind of point in time assessment for the whole RCSA to basically see what the direction of travel was for that risk assessment. Did my controls improve the inherent risk rating, or did the business direction of travel increase the inherent risk, and get that point in time insights um, via the form. As we move down to the controls area, this is an area where a lot of our customers will get huge benefit, right? So what this enables is, if you're someone who's thinking or considering moving off spreadsheet onto a GRC platform, you often end up with very unwieldy rows connected to merge cells, etc., and can be quite a challenge to make sense of it. Protect has the ability to connect registers from other areas into the one register. Now, this is very important because it supports that one-to-many relationship. So oftentimes we will have customers, and the right balance is probably 3 to 4 controls supporting the mitigation of a particular risk. And in that mitigation of the risk, you'd expect to see a balance between preventative, detective, reactive, corrective controls, depending on your philosophy. And really, you're looking for kind of a blend of those controls to support how the organization is going to mitigate that risk, but also from a resilient point of view, making sure you've got those not only preventing the risk from manifesting, but detecting and reacting once it has happened, so you can, from a resilience point of view, recover quickly from the event, so it doesn't quickly expand into other areas. And again, I think one of the key central points is having this all on the one form and keeping the UI as clean and as clear as possible. As we come down through to the residual risk rating, the user is able to quickly reflect on the controls above before making that assertion where they sit with regards to the residual risk rating, which ultimately is the most important outcome of the assessment. So how much risk is the business running today after all of those controls have been applied? Some organizations will then like the opportunity to either accept the risk if it's in a low rating or it's within management approved risk appetite tolerance, but also there will be the opportunity to treat risks. And that treatment process is often very important because that then will dictate how you take from that residual risk rating down to that next stage, which might be the target risk rating. So where do you want the risk profile to land for that particular risk, that cyber risk? And as we're connecting those points together, so we're linking the metrics to the form, we're linking those 3 controls to the form, and also we're kind of mapping out that residual risk rating, the ability to tell that risk story on a page becomes increasingly important. So what many will ask for is risk on a page. It's the nirvana of risk management for many, especially for business owners who just want to see all of the activities. They trust the activities are happening, but they want to see what does the story look like. So coming back to that chapter and verse, I guess type metaphor, to see, does the story check out? So when I add up all of the data points with regards to my control effectiveness ratings, the outcome of my KRI metrics, does that tell a clear story with regards to how I arrived at that residual risk rating? And is that something the organization, the exco, the board as a whole are comfortable with supporting? Now, we will see customers extend these connection points into issue management. So if you have controls that are broken or you've got control gaps that have been identified, you might open up some issues to call those out and offer an opportunity for management to either invest in controls to close those gaps, or at least make a plan with regards to kind of bringing that risk level back into more acceptable kind of tolerance levels. Also, we will see audit findings getting attached, so where there's been that independent assurance performed, and where they've identified potentially, exceptional data points that maybe need to be corrected or looked into. We can capture those on the form also. And this really just goes into that in more detail. And you'll also see coming through here those incidents that we talked about in the first step, in the kind of previous section. So raising that incident quite easily via Cognita, transitioning that onto the form, And once we've made that connection, and this is where it's important to establish that connection to the risk library. Once we've connected um, that particular incident back to this cyber risk and any related incidents that are connected to that cyber risk that happen in this particular organization, we can now start to see them coming through. So, from a top-down perspective, Protect will take the risk event as the kind of core, and really everything needs to link back to that risk event, because that is your so what at the end of the day. If you're looking for investment in a particular action or a control, why am I doing it? So you're generally doing it to mitigate an event from occurring, or to minimize the impact for one that has occurred. So that was kind of a bottom up view. So that's looking at an individual risk, cyber risk in that example. It's the fourth or fifth one down there on the page. Now, as we roll it back up to that initial landing page that I showed you, where it's got that IT department and we've got the seven or eight risk assessments sitting under that, a big challenge for many is now, how do I aggregate all of those data points to get a view of the overall kind of health score of my enterprise risk framework? So, the operational risk team might be responsible for, and particularly prevalent in large organizations, the operational risk team might be responsible for looking after KRIs, the controls, and the risk assessments. But then you might have the compliance team, and they've got their policies that require adherence. There's obligations under management, and they might have a series of attestations that they would like the business to complete as part of their workflow, to make sure that there is the necessary adherence to policy and overall organizational guidelines. And similarly with audit findings, when audit reports are published, a challenge for many is making sure that there's the follow through and the tracking of those audit findings through to completion. They're not just on a nice shiny report that doesn't go anywhere. So, we really like this dashboard, because what this does, it tells a story through data points with regards to the pulse of the organization. And what this aims to do is, if we take that cyber example again and we look at that risk event that's 5 risks down, and you can see we've arrived at a residually low rating there, perhaps artificially low, but let's explore why that might be the case, or if we should be challenging. So we can see that there's no controls linked to this particular event, which is strange. We would expect a risk such as cyber to have some material controls linked and active and reviewed in the last 12 months. In that space, the kind of IT controls and frameworks, etc., we would expect there to be adherence to maintain the upkeep of the ISO 27001, NIS2, DORA type stuff. There's going to be a lot of compliance activities there. So the adherence to completion of the compliance attestations is this very important reference point for the business to lean on. Similarly, if in that cyberspace, risk metrics are going to be important indicators, be it from an early warning perspective or from a lagging perspective, to make sure that we, the business, are actually tracking in line with board approved risk appetite. Now, if we are red for consecutive months, that might trigger a material change in the risk appetite profile that requires escalation and perhaps a review of those metrics. Um, it's not unusual for a metric to be red perhaps for 1 month or 2 months, but if we do see it kind of transitioning into that third month, either the metric needs to be changed, or potentially the tolerance associated with that metric requires review. We spend a lot of time at Protect also looking into our risk culture dashboards, which I strongly encourage anyone who hasn't seen them to have a look at. And one of the things that that dashboard will look at in more detail is the organization's attitude towards action. So this is really then talking to conduct within the organization. So as actions are being assigned to them, what level of prioritization are they putting on those actions, perhaps versus other responsibilities they have in the organization today? So in this example, for the cyber risk event, we can see that there's 3 overdue actions. So really what I'm deciphering from that is perhaps other areas are getting prioritized. The risk action or treatment plan falls into the too hard basket, and that requires attention. And then I can similar on a similar train or thread, I can see that the audit findings um, have not been completed on time. So that gives rise to concern that an independent assurance team has called out control gaps or weaknesses or process gaps or weaknesses, and the business simply hasn't corrected them. I can see that that's possibly resulted in a number of events compared with other areas for the time horizon that we're looking at in this dashboard. And all in all, the story doesn't check out. So how we got to that low rating certainly requires a significant challenge. I think that low rating might have been artificially presented there to drive the story. But essentially, the overall context of what we're trying to achieve here is present a story on a page across the wider organization by way of numbers. And when we do this across multiple business units, it allows us to roll it up into a wider health score for the corporate office, the corporate being the wider organizational context. And you can then see maybe on a 1 to 5 scale, and customers can really set out their own scales here. But really, what we're trying to get it up to is that one number that you want to maybe track over time that really talks to, is the organization moving in the right direction? And all of those things that we're talking to and we expect the risk framework to be delivering upon, is it actually manifesting in day-to-day activities? This example of a dashboard aims to summarize if we take the IT landscape as an example, this is really just highlighting on a page some of the things that you can draw management attention to. So this is really just summarizing the status of the risk profile, highlighting areas of weakness, highlighting the areas with the highest residual risk. As we talked about, they're the ones that the business is deemed to have been running the most risk, and they're the ones that maybe the controls are going to have the utmost importance. If you're depending on maybe 1 or 2 controls there, or maybe they're weaker controls, they might be detective reactive controls. So we certainly need to be giving them more attention. And then also you can just assess the scope of activities that are due in a particular time. So looking at the risk assessments and actions due in the next 30 days. So from a prioritization of time, etc., you can balance your time efficiently. This is a similar view, but just presenting it for the compliance persona. So as we know in compliance, a lot of the customers that come to Protect and look for that digitization return on investment is really taking a lot of data presented on unwieldy spreadsheets, getting them into a tool, and then processing that data to make some sense of where are we at with regards to current status of those obligations. And we talked about things like attestations earlier, and the overall linkage to risk from the compliance function. And that's really what we're trying to achieve here, is present that story on a page. And you can see in the top 10 risks, the external cyber attack featuring as the top risk. So what that's saying there is that from an obligations point of view, 62 obligations connected into that particular risk area. So very high focus, highly, from an operation risk perspective, but also the various compliance obligations that we need to support, mitigation of that risk. In this example here, what's really important is to show the business, and particularly Exco, people who maybe are taking a quarterly pulse view or quarterly, I guess, oversight piece to look at the business. And really what they love is metrics, right? So metrics bring it to life with regards to how you monitor the status of those risk assessments. So a lot of our customers will spend a lot of time on this and shaping metrics and really trying to get those that risk appetite scale in line with business strategic objectives. And we have a slide later that will kind of talk to that. But really, this aims to identify where, we talked about the metric being, or the tolerance being read for 3 months consecutively. So maybe the call center area is potentially a red flag area there, where you can see the 2 assigned metrics, complaints to the ombudsman, and number of complaints in general has been trending above appetite. So that might be an area of deep dive, and that's the purpose of that dashboard, is to highlight areas whereby we're not tracking in line with the board approved appetite. Now, our AI assistant Cognita, this is one that I'm particularly excited about, and it's just been released. So we can help all users with its analysis of those dashboards and report. Now, on the left is an example of one of our out-of-the-box reports, being the one I've just taken you through, the KRI monthly trend report. Um, but here's an example of Cognita's analysis of the key callouts from the report. And this analysis will reduce interpretation time. So risk teams will spend a lot of time analyzing these dashboards and trying to write summaries, but AI can help interpret that data quickly. It can turn these pages of dashboard information into clearly digestible summaries that can then be made comprehensible and available to Exco on demand. So it makes dashboards easier to understand, and it'll bridge the data literacy gap. So business users don't need to decode complex charts or bar charts or a lot of what we just showed you there. AI can explain what the data means in plain language. And really, what that should do is enable better, faster decisions. So coming back to that point, progress, not perfection. What we really want to do is to have a fluid risk management framework, a live workflow that enables better, faster decisions. But really, to do that, we need something that can readily engage. And we think when stakeholders arrive with these insights already summarized, it'll make meetings more focused on the actions to take the organization forward. We also can really help surface those patterns and outliers. So, many are seeking to see, I guess, that horizon risk or that kind of threat assessment ahead of time. And really, we think there's a big opportunity here to highlight those trends, anomalies, and signals that it might not be obvious in kind of raw dashboards. And what it can also do is flag those next steps. So where there's data gaps, recommended follow-ups, or point-to-point remedial actions, we can flag those in the tool. Moving on to the topic of trust and adoption and ownership, trust for adoption and ownership, I should say. Now, adoption and ownership is not only about an intuitive UI for occasional users logging incidents, it's also driven by a system's ability to support risk domains that are nominally adjacent because many of the risk domains are connected. We want to be able to enable collaboration across teams. Now, when different functions work in the same platform, it becomes easier to collaborate and share information. That's certainly a goal for the Protect tool, is to enable that seamless communication flow between business units. So getting that horizontal connection in the enterprise. We certainly want to empower and create that clear ownership. So our view is everyone in the organization is a risk manager or is a risk owner as part of their day-to-day role. It's not just refined to the few. And we believe that everyone should be able to see their responsibilities and how their actions contribute to managing risk across the organization. Now, if we can do that, we do think it can drive consistency and visibility. So if we have a shared system that creates consistent processes and gives teams end-to-end visibility of how risk and controls interact, that's only going to lead to better outcomes for the organization. And finally, we do also believe that, through our AI, Cognita, and the ability to integrate those teams, it is going to drive significant, both from a timing and cost perspective. It's going to improve efficiency, and in doing so, take that cost out of the business. So instead of having multiple tools and duplicate work, we think teams will be able to operate in one connected environment. And in doing so, this should be able to save significant time and reducing that operational cost as a result. In this slide, this is where Protect brings together all the key elements of the risk management so organizations can manage risk from identification through to monitoring, reporting, and action in a single platform. And here, what we're trying to explain is connecting risks domains that are usually siloed. It supports a wide range of including operational risk, compliance, cyber risk, third-party risk, operation resilience, and BCM, internal audit, and environmental health and safety, in addition to recently ESG. Um, And one of the key points here is to really make sure that we're building and establishing that interconnection rather than separate tools. So a big pain point for many is having fragmented tools. And these areas aren't managed in isolation. So our platform aims to connect them. So risk controls, incidents, vendors, resilience activities, they can all be understood in the correct context and connected in the platform. And if you can do that all in the one platform, it's going to enable better business engagement, but also greater insights off the back of it. Um, and I think the key point also from a product point of view is we have the necessary flexibility to fit different organizations. So teams can implement the modules they need when they need it and scale the solution as and when they're ready to progressively build it out with different teams. So often we will start with 2 or 3 user stories for each organization and might just be limited to operational risk. And then once the confidence and the trust evolves in the product, and we do believe we have the highest retention rate in the market, then we start to expand into the other functional teams across the enterprise, be it resilience, compliance, third-party risk management, etc., depending where the needs are. And all of this, we're hoping, will lead to that complete view of risk, with risk remaining central to everything we're looking to do. So just a couple of slides to finish. Just to touch on resilience for a second. So, resilience certainly has came up more than once today. And across jurisdictions, regulation is increasingly focused on resilience and driving stronger expectations for cyber risk management, vendor oversight, and effective controls as a result. So overwhelmingly positive change from a resilience perspective. I was fortunate when I joined Protect, coming from, well, in that West Group today, but formerly Royal Bank of Scotland. I was one of the initial ones charged with looking into this Operation Resilience as a concept as they released it back in 2018, 2019. And when I came to Protect, I was adamant that we need to have this process mapping architecture in the platform to support, and delighted to have that in there today to support customers in this space. And really what we're observing is regulators are requiring organizations to demonstrate the ability to withstand disruption and maintain those critical services. So a lot of work from our customers now going into that scenario assessment process, and really then also including their third parties as part of that ecosystem to make those scenarios as robust as possible. As part of that process as well, we see a significant drive into connecting other data points to support the process flow. And what that means, really, from a resource point of view, you can have things like a third party being a resource, a data source being a resource, but also a lot of IT assets, be it software, hardware, etc. And the ability to link in cyber incident responsiveness and to be able to detect, report, and respond to cyber incidents faster and with greater transparency. We see that, in addition to the third party piece, becoming a significant value proposition for us. So the ability to connect resilience, cyber, and vendor, in addition to quickly identifying the vulnerabilities that might sit out there around some of the controls linked to those particular areas, that's really going to make it into a robust op resilience playbook that gets delivered to the regulator every year. And as a result of that, you're going to see more in-depth scenarios and also a more resilient organization as a result. Yeah, and then just quickly to touch on, I mentioned the process map. Here's an example of what one of those maps looks like. It's a little bit of a condensed one just to give you a snapshot. But really what we're looking at in the top left-hand corner is the name of the actual important business service, a brief summary of what it entails, what the impact tolerance or maximum tolerable disruption is for that particular service. Now, in this example, we've gone with time, as that seems to be popular with many, but we have seen examples where people have used customer volumes. Some have used economic numbers financially to kind of articulate priorities, etc. But really what we're trying to do then is have that high level process flow. So be it at the fraud check, balance check, etc., being the processes, But then underneath that, you'll have the various teams. So there will be the people element to it, or you might have the core banking system being a software. So really having that view on the page and being able to quickly see where the vulnerabilities sit, where the critical systems are, and getting that buy-in across the organization that everyone's on the same page with regards to, what are my critical systems, who are my critical people in this service, and then also from recovery time objectives, have we put the necessary testing strategies and monitoring programs in place that we can confidently stand behind those numbers. And where we've seen that become really interesting in recent times is whereby, the exercise has really highlighted that dependency on third parties. And there's not many, particularly in the financial services and insurance industry today, that don't have intrinsically linked third party dependencies, be it cloud service providers or others, whereby if they were to fall over, you know, the organization's ability to recover is going to come under challenge. Just moving on to the cyber story for a second. Our cyber risk management solution helps cybersecurity technology and risk leaders cut exposure, strengthen their posture, and also prove compliance. So it's quite a lot to kind of unpack in that. And on the left-hand side, you'll see the kind of domain workflows that we're working towards, and the really the huge value prop is having a single source of truth, our cyber risk workspace, where the organization can monitor adherence to the various frameworks. It can update their various assets, the IT assets that sit across the profile, but then also it can integrate with other parts of the enterprise as well. And that might be incidents, it might be policies that are being updated real time, and also the various control testing programs or assurance-led activities, be it from internal controls teams or perhaps independent assurance teams as well. So, we're delighted to release this last November, and really these ready to use frameworks and content, with pre-configured frameworks, control libraries, registers, and dashboards. These are really helping our customers get started quickly and structure their cyber governance forum. So we've seen a huge uptake in, CISO engagement as a result, as you'd expect. I think there's 10 or 12 cyber dashboards which underpins this. And really that's helping organizations have that clear view of their cyber posture. So dashboards and analytics providing insights into those detailed and sometimes complex IT related risks, incidents, vulnerabilities, and controls, to make it more wider understood by the rest of the organization. Similar story in vendor risk management solutions. So really what we're seeking to do here is help organizations understand your third party risk exposure. So this will help help our customers assess vendors across financial, security, operational, and policy risks to identify weaknesses in those critical providers. It also helps visualize the dependencies and concentration risks. It helps continuously monitor the vendor risk profile, and it helps also prioritize and manage remediation. So you can see from the tiering structure there, and also the criticality of the vendor, what maybe potentially the size of the contract, depending on your methodology, how you assess the tiers, but then also you can quickly see which ones excuse me, have tasks outstanding. I'll just grab a quick water. You can quickly see which ones have tasks outstanding. In addition to this, with regards to the third-party risk management workflow, we have the ability to align that vendor oversight with the regulatory framework. So if you're in Europe, it might be the EBA outsourcing guidelines. With the PRA, it might be the SS2 and 2.1 outsourcing requirements, or FCA op resilience. And then more recently, we've done a lot of work in the DORA space. All right. So moving on, as we kind of slowly move to wrap up, what does technology to trust look like for the exec and the board? And, in our view, that is a system that aggregates data in real time across the enterprise. It enables that focus on actionable insight. And we really believe, the board wants that clear visibility of enterprise risk. It wants confidence that the organization is compliant. It wants those faster and better decisions. and it wants fewer operational surprises. So all that I've shown you today, we really feel gets the organization to that place whereby there's an openness and there's a transparency with regards to the risk profile. And that will mean that, that will enable the better trust of, or the empower the trust of regulators, investors, customers, and the various other stakeholders that exist in the organization. Um, the strategic objectives dashboard then helps to bring that to light. So in this example, what we can do is identify what your big 4 or 5 pillars are and really help the organization track progress against those kind of themed metrics. So where we have some of our key pillars, making sure that we've got clear action plans and milestones connected to, as the organization moves in pursuit of those strategic objectives, that the risk profile and the risk appetite is mapped to those strategic objectives. So you should really have those 3 things moving together: the risk management strategy, the risk appetite statement, and the business plan. And the business plan, the way that will manifest is in those strategic and operational plans or themes. And what we're looking to do here is mobilize those in the risk management system. And if we can do that, what we can do is connect them all back into the wider risk profile and context. Um, just looking at the group risk dashboard for a second, and this might not apply to all, but this is a really useful report whereby you've got your risk profile set up, you've got your controls and monitoring program in place, you're assessing the control effectiveness, you've got your KRIs running, and really, what we're aiming to do here is to have a live interactive update to a report whereby the user can select what group risk they're assessing, be it operational risk in this example. They can add their commentary to the top of the page, and then you can quickly export it and bring it into a PowerPoint deck, etc., or the relative governance deck for presentation. So that really is a huge time saver, and helping organizations tell that holistic view of risk or the connected view of risk more seamlessly. This is just a deep dive into that action space. I won't spend too much on this. I think we've kind of covered that already. But this is the bit I really, really think that's worth grabbing your attention. And actions exist in every organization. So, all of the ProTech customers will have actions movement report and various action dashboards that are reported. ProTech's AI assistance Cognita, this will help execs and the board get through the analysis of these action dashboards almost real time, well, essentially real time. And, this will highlight, just a reminder, trends, anomalies, signals that, may not be obvious on the face of it. It will flag data gaps, it will recommend follow-ups, and it will point to, potential remedial actions. So again, just to call out, this is the AI is taking a view of the dashboard. It's then putting this into simple plain English text that can, be hopefully comprehensible to the board. So, whilst there's still room for, of course, bar charts and graphs and everything else, I think what we're going to see is a kind of more blended model going forward where boards are going to want to have appetite to, coming back to that book storytelling piece again, what's happened, what are we doing about it, and by when. So having that kind of next step story ready to go. So ultimately, to summarize, trust is in risk management and the impact it has on the organization. And this will come from clear, connected, and actionable intelligence. And really, the goal here is to make it easy for everyone in the organization to participate. So, as I said at the start, 90% of the people who engage with the ProTech GRC tool, they're not risk managers. They're not risk ultimately in their role. They're coming from a business perspective or a revenue generating function. And this really, for us and for everyone, should be about removing friction. So, whilst we all recognize that good risk management requires some workflow and activity to support, we really need to be able to remove that friction so people across the business in particular can easily contribute information and engage with the risk process. If we can do that, we'll create a reliable source of truth, and that will ensure that data is maintained in a real-time shared platform and everyone is working from the same information rather than having competing versions of the truth. It will help us connect information across the organization. So often, and you'll have heard Michael talk about GRC Orchestrate earlier today. Um, you know, fragmented tools over time. Often, maybe during the COVID period, there was a huge rush to maybe get different bits of software and maybe not a coherent strategy. But the more we can connect information across the organization, the better. So Protect's very fortunate at this point in time because we have an enterprise ready GRC solution. So we can offer everything in the one solution. But we also recognize that there may be a point solution in a particular area that an organization particularly desires, and we have no problem integrating with that solution and taking the necessary data points and pulling them into Protect to help tell that meaningful story from a risk perspective. Hopefully, that then we can present that bigger picture and surface those meaningful insights. And finally, to translate that insight into action. So it was nice to finish with the action dashboard there, and I think really that really helps bring the all the activity to life, because that's really down to the what are we doing about it. That will help drive the risk culture forward. It does that by having clear ownership and accountability, brings those insights and leads them into action. And then hopefully over time, you're kind of decreasing the risk that the residual risk ratings that the organizations are running, which basically helps the business make money safely. And ultimately, that should be the goal of any risk function, is to minimize the downside, any downside losses in the organization, and help the business achieve its strategic objectives in a timely fashion. And by doing that, by taking as much risk out as possible within that board approved appetite. We can't take it all out, so let's not try that. But really, hopefully in the spirit of today, you've kind of got an understanding how Protect is really bringing risk intelligence and shifting the dial around what risk intelligence means for us, moving beyond kind of reporting to kind of building trust and enabling those faster, quicker decision making through Cognita AI across the tools. So, look, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate you listening in. Hope you enjoyed the whole day. And thank you for your time, and look forward to seeing you in the very near future. Bye for now.